Well, number one, it's really important to know your numbers, especially right now going into 2023. Everything across the board has dropped about 18% in terms of travel. There is a lot of booking platforms out there, so you can use Airbnb. There's a new company that's called Rabu. There's a couple out there, MasterVisor. They're all used very differently, but you can use them all together in synchrony to kind of get you a base rate of what you're going to make.
Hey everybody, it's Luis Morales here. Welcome back to another episode of the Morales Group Show. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Rafa Loza. He is a real estate investor that specializes in short-term and mid-term rentals. And today he is going to be going over what is Airbnb rental arbitrage. Welcome to the show, Rafa. How are you?
Hey man, what's up? Thanks for having me on. All is good, man. All is good. Just been busy the last couple of months. But yeah, I'm excited to get into this topic.
Yeah, I'm very excited because I think it's something that either people are familiar with it or they're not familiar with it. And if you're not familiar with it and you're looking to potentially grow like a stream of cash flow with not a very large investment, the rental arbitrage might be the right strategy. So for our viewers that don't know who Rafa Loza is, who is Rafa Loza and how did you get involved in this wonderful world of real estate investing?
Yeah, for sure. So just a SoCal kid, man. Was raised here. I was born in Mexico. I was raised here in Southern California. I've been in Orange County my entire life. A couple years ago, I was trying to get into real estate investing. Had very little money to do so. As you know, properties, the cost of property into getting into a property here in SoCal is extremely expensive. So about 6 years ago, I started my journey. I wanted to buy a single family home. I wanted to do the whole financial freedom thing where you buy a property, rent it out, and you live off the rent, right? Quickly found out that wasn't going to happen, specifically based on the rates and prices and the rents that you get here in SoCal. So in the time of learning that and trying to get into that, I started doing research, found some kids who were in Airbnb investing. I found out that they were renting out an apartment building and were re-renting it out to people on Airbnb as a short-term basis. And I was like, I didn't know that was a thing. And I started doing research and I found out about short-term rentals. Come to find out short-term rentals are Airbnb, right? Airbnb is just a marketing platform that we use. And so I dug in, started doing the research on it. I found out about how you can lease property, get permission from the owners, and then get it furnished, set up, and then rent it out to people short term for a profit. I got my first 2-bedroom apartment after hundreds of phone calls of asking people to let me work in their building and to rent out their building. Getting all these no, I finally got a yes. And we signed up a 2-bedroom apartment lease. We got it furnished. We spent, at the time, I had about $6,000 in cash. I borrowed a $9,000 credit card from a brother of mine. I used the credit card to get it all furnished and set up. I used the cash for the rent, the first month's rent and the deposit. It took us about 2 weeks to get set up. We just went at it hard. We hired a designer to come in and design most of the things that we didn't know how to do. And a month later, we made about $6,000 in profit, which was insane, on a 2-bedroom apartment. Back in the day, it was a lot easier. Now it's extremely difficult to get those kind of returns, but I was all in. It sold me. I was like, wow, can't believe I just made $6,000 in 1 month. Like, it was beyond me, right? And so I compared to a long-term lease where I would probably be making $100, $200 in profit if I was even able to get that. If not, maybe losing money for the first couple of years on those long-term leases with these expensive properties. And so I said, hey, you know what? I'm just going to give this a go. And I started building good relationships with investors and owners and property managers. Fast forward to 9 months later, I had 17 properties in 2 different buildings, all rental arbitrage. They were all doing about $1,500 to $2,000 a month in profit. Fast forward to today, I have a total of about 76 properties. About 53 of those are arbitrage, and the rest I own or I help people manage.
That is awesome, man. So for the viewers that don't know what arbitrage is, it basically means that you're leasing out a property. You're not buying it. The owner is giving you permission to do short-term or even mid-term rentals. Whatever margin is left from the amount that you're renting it for to the amount that you're renting it for is basically profit, or the margin. You're basically keeping the margin. So it's a way of keeping making some money. I'm curious, what was the difference? Like, you said that you talked to like hundreds of people and like one of them finally said yes. Did you change the pitch? was there anything different? Was it just like a different type of customer, and that kind of opened your eyes? Like, oh man, I've been talking to the wrong people. What was the difference?
Yeah. So back before, I was just calling people and saying, hey, I do corporate rentals. I'm trying to lease out an apartment for people who are traveling in this area. And we have high demand, and I would like to rent out your place, get it set up furnished, and end up leasing it to the people short term. And people get scared, right? Oh, back then, Airbnb wasn't such a big word as it is now. But people would be like, no, we don't want you doing that. We don't want that kind of movement going on in our complexes. So here's the difference, the key difference on it. Number one, I changed the way I approached it, but number two, I changed the people I approached. I was going to large property management companies. I no longer am going to property management companies. I started going after very small niche investors with hundreds of properties in their portfolio who, when they get a turnover, I'm the one that takes over the lease. Or when they buy a new property, I'm the one who comes in and rents it long term because they know who I am. And I started looking for buildings that had an actual vacancy problem, not just right nowadays. Like, you get all these gurus teaching you to just email blast thousands of people and you'll get one or two yeses, and it just doesn't work sustainably, like long term. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But what I do is I go after buildings that are brand new builds or being heavily rehabbed because they have a big vacancy problem, and I come in and I fill that vacancy instantly with one signing of one document. I can lease out anywhere from a 8 unit to a 30 unit building. The largest I've done is 30 units.
That's awesome, man. Now, I just out of curiosity, because when I think Airbnb rental arbitrage, I was imagining like single family residences. For some reason, that's kind of where my head was.
Sure.
You're over here saying like, hey, look, I rented out like an entire 30-unit apartment, like
Yeah.
on Airbnb. Like, is there like an ideal type of property that you should be looking for, or why the big buildings versus like a single family residence?
So you can do either or. You're going to want to target whoever target customer you want to attract, or the customer you're trying to cater to. Because if you get a one bedroom apartment, not only is the cost significantly less, so you can get into a one bedroom apartment for way less than you can a 3 bedroom house. But a one bedroom apartment is only going to attract a certain type of customer, a business traveler, a medical professional traveling through, a young couple coming in through the city, the budget traveler, depending on how you set that apartment up and the location that you get it in.
Mm-hmm.
If you go into a 3 bedroom plus house, you're now looking at a completely different demographic of customer. You're looking at larger families, larger groups. You're going to attract more of insurance agencies for those midterm rental bookings, rather than the one single nurse who just needs a place to stay while they're doing their 90-day contract. So you can do anything that you want from one. I have as little as a studio, and I have as large as a 4-bed, 3-bath. And they all do great. They just all have very different customers, and they all have very different seasons. So like my 3 bedroom house, I have literally a 3 bedroom house next door to a 1 bedroom apartment within 10 feet of walking. And the 3 bedroom house during the slow season is completely vacant, but the 1 bedroom apartment's consistent all the way through. But during the summer, that 3 bedroom house is making me $12,000 to $15,000 a month in revenue, and the 1 bedroom apartment's still that consistent 3-4 grand a month.
That makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Now, how do you determine like whether something's going to make sense for rental arbitrage? Like for our viewers that maybe don't know like how to look at the numbers, like I've heard of different platforms or websites that do it. Like how do you know if there's actually going to be a margin, or how do you know if the demand is going to be there?
Well, number one, it's really important to know your numbers, especially right now going into 2023. Everything across the board has dropped about 18% in terms of travel. There is a lot of booking platforms out there, so you can use AirDNA. There's a new upcoming that's called Rabu. There's a couple out there, MasterVisor. They're all used very differently, but you can use them all together in synchrony to kind of get you a base rate of what you're going to make. Once you have that number, then you got to get all your startup cost number. With rental arbitrage, and I can't stress this enough to all your listeners and all the viewers out there, make sure that you get in at the right rates right now. Rental arbitrage and Airbnb arbitrage, a lot of investors know about it now. And because there's a lot of guys trying to get into it, odds are somebody's already been, that investor or that property manager has already been hit up to use the property as an arbitrage. And so they get smart and they start raising these rent rates. I can go and get a 1 bedroom apartment now, probably for like $3,000. As market rents, just because other people are willing to pay for it, not having their numbers correctly. So again, can't stress it enough. If you get in at the wrong rate amount for rent, even if you get that place 100% booked, you're not going to be generating the revenue needed to cover all your costs, because it's not just rent. You got to pay electricity, utilities, internet, gas, water. You might not be able to negotiate trash and sewer and all that stuff into the lease, into the rent, so that's fine. but then you got to pay for cleaning services, all your consumables, all your linens, all that fun stuff has to get covered also, and therefore your cost to operate goes higher, right? And so, to give you guys an example, I wouldn't, in my location now, without getting too long-winded here with this answer, without knowing your numbers, if I were to just go in and get a one-bedroom apartment for $3,000 a month, and I never ran data, I just think it's a good market, and I start only the demand only for this area because in this corner there happens to be, I don't know, 300 Airbnbs or something, and I'm only doing $100 a night, and I'm only at let's say at a 82% occupancy or something, then you're looking at what, 4, 5, 6 days vacancy, give or take. And so now you're only going to be making 2,900 bucks a month, but your cost of rent is $3,000 plus an extra 300-400 bucks of operating expenses. You're going to lose money. So it's super important to get in on these deals where you come into the investors and say, hey, number one, run your market rent. So you know what that one bedroom apartment's going for in the area so that these investors don't take advantage of you or get you at a high rent. Number two, you've already ran what the revenue that you're going to generate in that market's going to be. Then you can compare. So if you go into it and say, hey, I want this one bedroom apartment, you already have a relationship with the investor and he says, yeah, I'll give it to you for $3,000. And you say, hey, you have the data in front of you and you can go, look, dude, these are only going for like 2,500 bucks in this area. Give it to me for 2,500 bucks. I'll sign a 3-year term. That way you're fully vacant. We can go up 25 bucks every 6 months or every year. That way you start making a little more money as time goes by. Now you've gone in at around 500 bucks under what he wanted because you have data that shows that the market rent has been at that rate. And then you know that you're going to be doing about 4,000, 4,500 bucks a month on that one bedroom apartment in this market. Then you're setting yourself up for success. You get what I'm saying? Rather than going in and just saying, oh, well, I like this place. It looks good. I think I'm in a good area, $3,000. I checked other Airbnbs. They're going for 150. I'll make some money, not actually knowing what your operating expenses are going to be, what your consumables are going to be, and what all your other numbers are going to be. You're setting yourself up for failure. Hopefully that makes sense.
Hey, are there any rules of thumb like for operating expenses? Example, like I own an apartment complex, a 25 unit, and when I'm underwriting other apartment complexes, I either use like a 40 or even a 50% expense ratio, which takes into account taxes, insurance, maintenance, vacancies, and some of the other things. Are there rules of thumb to like kind of like, okay, like if you're going to rent it out for this, you need to be able to rent it out on Airbnb at 100 a night or 200 a night, or what are the rules of thumb kind of look like for maybe somebody that isn't familiar with how to do the numbers 100%?
Yeah. So there's no rule of thumb, like in terms of percentage basis. It's simple. You're going to want to take the 4 major expenses. What's the utilities all combined together?
Mm-hmm.
What's going to be your consumables all together? Your internet expense. And then if you're doing anything like security or anything special like that, you're going to add that to it. So you can do like, if you're doing like a Vivint security system in a large house, or if you're doing like a Ring system in that house. I typically do $400 to $500 on top of my rent. That's my average across the board, but that's in my market, right? Because I know my electricity and utilities is going to be about 200 bucks. I know that my internet is going to be 60 to 70 bucks because I provide good internet. I know that I provide other subscriptions to capture emails, to keep the noise levels down, all that security equipment stuff. That's about another 100 bucks on top of it. So on average for a 1-bedroom apartment, 400 bucks, 2-bedroom apartment, 500 bucks, 3-bedroom house, I would say 500 to 600 bucks. That's what you're looking for on top of the rent for your operating expenses. Okay. So that answers that first part. As far as the rule of thumb for what you're going to generate in revenue, again, no rule of thumb, but you're going to want to check what other locations in that area are going for. So if you're doing a 3-bedroom house, you want to check what the average of the 3-bedroom house is going for in that market. And it's simple. Just pull up a 10-mile radius of where that property's at, right? Check what they're going for. I always, when I do this and how I teach people, is you do 45 days out. So you do 5 to 10 days out. Then you do 45 days out. And then you're going to do 2 months out. And then from there, you're just going to look at the season. So you look at the summer, you look at the winter, and that's it, right? Fall, spring, all that stuff. Once you have those numbers, then you can know where you're at in terms of what your rate's going to be. But the rule of thumb is you're going to always underwrite it for 80% occupancy. So you're going to account for 20% vacancy. Never write it as a full. If you think that apartment's going to make a full 100%, I'm sorry, but if you think that apartment's going to make $100 a night at 30 days, that's $3,000, and your rent's $1,200, you're never going to get 100% occupancy unless you're doing midterm rentals. And odds are you're not going to get $100 a night with the midterm rental. It's going to be a lot lower. So 80% occupancy, 75 to 80 is the sweet number in terms of occupancy. 25 to 20% in terms of vacancy is what you're going to want to account for always.
Yeah. And obviously that varies based on season as well too, right? Like obviously like your house, that you said that it's certain months of the year it doesn't have very high demand. So like, let's go back to the beginning. Like, let's say that you got my attention with this rental arbitrage. You're like, man, I want to start rental arbitrage. Like, where would I go to meet like these homeowners that have 100-unit properties, or where do I go to build these types of relationships?
Um, it's everywhere, man. Talk about everything that you do. I meet people all the time just because I talk about what I do now. Social media, I get people hitting me up on social media asking me um, if I can rent out. But if you're fresh, brand new, go to real estate meetups and start talking about you're doing rental arbitrage. Don't tell people you're new and you're just trying to get this started and you're trying to get the ball rolling and you want to give it a shot. Let them know, hey, I run a short-term rental business. I provide corporate housing. I provide good properties for people who are here short term. It'll start catching people's ears. But if you don't go to those network meetups and you're looking for someone to start fresh, you're going to want to go find anything that's being rehabbed or that's being built new, small, from single family to a small multifamily, 5-6 units, largest. And you can start talking to those investors or the contractors and get their info from the owner. Talk to the owner and tell them, hey, I'm starting a short-term rental company, or I have a short-term rental company in this area and I'm looking to expand. I have 3 to 4 new properties. I'd love to sit down and talk and let you know what the benefits of me working with you are. I can lease out the entire building. I can take over that for 3-4 years. I can lease out that 1-bedroom house. I'm going to furnish it. I'm going to invest some money into it. It's going to raise the value. I'm going to take care of it perfectly. Is that something you'd be interested in? Right. And you talk about some of the benefits, the key benefits of what you're going to be. I only bring up some of them because I can go on for the entire show here. But when you talk about that stuff and then build the rapport and relationship, right? Don't expect an answer from the first conversation. The first conversation is simple. Just introduce yourself, let them know who you are, what you do, and then follow up and have a follow conversation more in detail so that they know what it is that you're actually doing, so that you don't seem like you're just some dude trying to Airbnb their property.
Yeah. Do you ever do something like proactive? Like, for example, like I know Zillow has for rent properties for rent, and I know that some of them are property management companies and some of them are direct owners. Do you ever do something or teach any of your students, because I know you have students, to go on Zillow, look for the ones that aren't a property management, look for those homeowners and just reach out to them and basically pitch the opportunity?
Yeah, with the least success rate is going to be to check online to the renting agencies like Zillow, apartments.com, rent.com. You can go on there and find a bunch of apartment complexes that are for rent. The problem with that is that you're not going to find very many mom and pop owners. And if you do,
That's who you're looking for,
you're
basically.
looking for the mom and pop owners. Yeah, you're looking for the direct investors. And here's why. If you go into a large apartment complex, they're already an established property management company in place that's going to have parameters of what they can and can't lease to and who they can and can't lease to. And they don't care about you being a corporation coming in and leasing 5-6 units for short-term rentals. They're not going to care about that, number one, because you're going to disturb the long-term tenants. Number two, they don't care about having a certain percentage of vacancy because they've already accounted for that vacancy in their leasing process. And so if you come in and you go, hey, I can end your vacancy for these 5 units, and be like, oh, we already accounted for that. We don't care. We'd rather not have the headache of you having people rotate through here at all times. And so when you go to Zillow and you go to these apartment complexes, your odds of success or your chances for success are going to be significantly lower than when you go and have a face-to-face. Now, if you find a mom and pop owner on Zillow, make that initial phone call. Hey, my name's Rafa. I'm with Nine Ring Properties. We're short-term rental corporate housing provider. We want to come in and we're thinking of leasing your property because we're expanding in the area. Can we set up a time for me to view the property? Simple as that, right? Nothing. I don't give too much info. I just present myself who I am. Then when I show up in person, that's when the actual conversation begins and you start building rapport with them and explaining to them how you actually do it. But, don't go on Zillow and find a list of 1,000 homes and blast your pitch in an email. It's just not going to work. Number one, you're not going to get the rates you want. Number two, you're just going to piss somebody off or they're going to delete your email. You might get 1 or 2 yeses and they're going to be the ones that already know who can overcharge you on rent.
That's awesome. And then let's say that now I'm basically the owner and I've got questions about it. Like some of the questions like maybe that the owners would have be like, so you said that you're going to lease the property short term or midterm. Like what does that actually mean? Like that would be one of my questions if I was the landlord. I'd be like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, so does that mean you're not going to live at the unit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So First, it's important to know that short term and midterm are two different things. Short term is whatever the city doesn't allow you to do as a minimum as a short term lease. So, like, usually it's 30 days underneath, they'll consider short term leases. 30 days and above are midterm leases. The new fancy term is medium term or midterm leases, but it's been around forever as corporate rentals or corporate housing, right? Or insurance agencies, any of the companies and stuff like that. But short term, when they ask me, hey, so what do you mean by that? Yeah. So what my company is going to lease out the property long term from you. We're going to furnish it. We're going to get it set up, and then we're going to offer it to people coming in this area that need it short term, who don't have the capacity to sign a long-term lease because they're only here for a work assignment, because they're only here for vacation, because they're here for leisure, because they want to check out the amenities that SoCal has to offer. And so that's what we provide as a service to them, right? And then if they ask you, well, you mean like Airbnb? Never lie about it, but don't tell them that, like, you don't want to bring it up first. You wait for them to tell you, because you want to explain to them how you use it. Yeah, similar to Airbnb, actually. Short-term rentals has been around for ages. It's just that now Airbnb is the most popular platform that now makes it very easy for us to find customers. Similar to how you would find your tenant on Craigslist, I just find my renter on Airbnb. It's the same type of customer. We have business travelers on your one bedroom apartment. We do vet everybody the same, but yes, it's similar to Airbnb. It's just a marketing platform that we use along with many others. My own personal website, other booking agencies online, Craigslist, otherrents.com, etc. But mainly it's going to be the customers that I've acquired or the companies that I've worked with who need places to stay. Now that's for short term, right? If you go looking strictly on midterm, and I know you wanted to touch on that a little bit. For midterm, for me, it's simple. Hey, I'm looking for corporate housing because my customers need somewhere to stay when they come to do their travel assignments. I get chefs from the restaurants from Disneyland, right? I get contractors who are here for a demolition job. I get contractors who are here to build a new building. I get agencies who are traveling from like Antarctica who need a place to stay while they're out here gathering food supplies. I get nurses who are here for 90 days. I get, I don't know, the list goes on. I get just someone who's here for business because this is a business heavy area out here in Southern California, right? So it depends on your area and the type of customers. I have a guy he's a paramedic, and he goes, oh, dude, we need places to stay all the time when we're out doing jobs. There you go. You've already found your target customer. That's your pitch to when you go and find a landlord. Hey, listen, I'm a paramedic, and when we travel, we're looking for places to stay. I already have the customers in place. I just need a place for them to stay. I'll rent your place out from you long term. I'll furnish it, and then I'm going to offer it to them. And that's it. Simple as that. If you talk
And then
about the
you can
customer,
do arbitrage on midterm rentals as well too, right? At least that's what it
absolutely.
sounds like. So let me ask you this: like, what would you say are the most frequently asked questions that a homeowner gives you whenever you're pitching this? And by the way, I just want to compliment you. I could tell that you've pitched this more than one time, bro. Like, I can tell just by the way that you've pitched it, the confidence in there, the delivery is spot on. Even the way that you're phrasing things, you're phrasing it. It's even a little bit assumptive, like the way that you're pitching it. So I want to congratulate you on that. But I did want to ask you, what are the most frequently asked questions, or what are the most frequently asked or objections to that you get, and then how would you handle some of those as well too?
Yeah, absolutely. So to answer your first question, the biggest objection you guys are going to find, or the biggest question from any landlord or investor is, are you using Airbnb? That's the biggest one. Back in the day, now the short-term rentals are out and everybody knows what a short-term rental is. Everybody always just automatically relates Airbnb to short-term rentals, right? And once you answer that, number one, confidently, number two, the right way, you'll overcome that objection, no problem. I have a guy right now who I actually have like 48 of his properties now. And when I first met him, he had a 12 unit complex that was vacant. And I came in and I was like, hey, I'm doing short term rentals. I make the meeting, like I told you guys. We show up and I explained to him, hey, we're a corporate housing provider. We're looking to expand here, but this building is going to be used for short-term rentals because we're so close to Disney, and we want people to, when they're here for leisure, to use this place because it's in such a great area. Now, I'll be the one leasing it long-term. I give my whole spiel. First thing he says is, okay, bro, are you going to be using Airbnb? And I stopped and I'm like, actually, yes, I am. But before I get into Airbnb, let me tell you how I actually run my business, how I manage it, and why I like to use Airbnb. Right. And he was like, okay. And that put his mind at ease. Right. Number one, I didn't lie. Number two, I told him I'll get into it once he understands how we get to it. And so it was a simple explanation. Similar to how I find my customers through my own direct marketing and websites, I use Airbnb on those days that I can't fill through my own bookings and my own platforms and my own connections, right? Now, at that point, I was lucky enough to already have connections. For somebody new, don't lie to them, but you can insinuate that you have connections because you're going to build them at some point if you're doing this correctly. Um, but it's simple. Hey, I will be using Airbnb to attract customers, but it's strictly just as a marketing platform. We don't run an Airbnb business. We run a short-term rental business, and the Airbnb platform is used only to acquire customers. And then I stop him and I go, "How did you market this building?" And he goes, "Well, just on Zillow and Rent.com." I go, "It's the exact same thing. Just like Zillow is your marketing platform to acquire long-term tenants, Airbnb is a marketing platform to acquire short-term tenants." Now, I don't want Airbnb to scare you away, because there is a lot of bad actors that use Airbnb, and there's a lot of people who don't know how to use Airbnb properly. The way we mitigate that risk is we have security systems in place. We have noise monitors that stop people from having parties. We have doorbell cameras that show the person who booked as a person who walked in through the door. We require a profile picture to be the person who walks in through the door. And we have an age limit, and we have house rules, right? You can't smoke. We have insurance in place, all this stuff. And I start going into all the details, and almost to the point where you kind of overwhelm them with like, dude, like it's overprotected. And then at the end of it, his conversation was like, okay. And then I stopped him before he gave me an answer, and I said, "Hey, look, you have this entire building right here. I've been doing this for a couple of years. I can take this entire building right now if you want to lease it all out. But if you don't, let's do this. Give me a chance. Let me rent this one bedroom apartment right now for 6 months only. You'll see how I operate. You'll see how I do. And if you don't like it, I'll leave it 6 months. No harm, no foul. At least you have your vacancy. Or if you like it, I'll take over the entire building right now." And that put his mind at ease. And he was like, "Huh, this guy can afford to rent this entire place out. He's got a legit business. He's not just doing this as a side gig, right?" Obviously, if you're new, you can't say that, but you can always offer, "Hey, give me the shot, right? Try me out for the 6 months. If you don't like it, we'll just sign a short-term lease. I'll move out. We're done. No big deal." And then once they start seeing, dude, it was a weekend. He started seeing how we furnished the place, how the security systems we were getting. He's like, "Hey, bro, you want another one?" And I was like, "Dude," I tell a story all the time. And I was like, "Dude, I'll take the entire building." And he's like, "Well, let's just do one more." And then literally 2 weeks later, "All right, let's do another one." I ended up doing 8 units in that building, So now I have 10 in that building. But, and that's the way it worked out. So those are the objections. And it literally comes down to just the confidence that you give people and the way you respond. If I would have been in there and be like, Airbnb, yeah, I use Airbnb. That's how we get our people to book our place. Like immediately they're gonna be like, "Nah, dude, you're out." You know what I mean? Like you number one, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're saying. You haven't even used Airbnb before. And in their mind, Airbnb is just a party platform to cause problems for other people.
Yeah. Where did you learn how to pitch this, bro? Like, meaning, like, was it just trial and error? Did you
Yeah.
take some sort of like special training? Did you read a specific book?
So I joined it was like a blueprint mastermind course. It wasn't a mastermind because this dude, he's a coach now. He's got a big program. But when he first started, it was when first short-term rentals were first coming about. I wanted to learn how to set up an Airbnb properly, and he told us that we were able to go out and ask people. When I started going to people and asking, "Hey, we want to lease your property out, so we can rent it to people short term," I started getting a lot of no's. And that's when I started really fine tweaking my pitch to it, because it was simple. Like the initial was just like, you just got to go ask someone that you're going to lease their property long term, you're going to furnish it, and you're going to rent it short term. And I was like, no, no, no. There was no benefit to me pitching that. Nobody wanted to work with that. So it came to a point where I was like, okay, I got to turn this into my own thing, and I got to start going after the right customers. And it becoming, hey, I'm doing corporate housing. I'm a corporate housing provider. I provide these for companies who need a place to stay for leisure, short term, who want to experience what Southern California has to offer. Not, hey, I'm doing this as a short term lease for people coming here to party or vacation, right? It's just certain keywords. And then I really started just targeting the people who had a need for my services, right? The first 2-bedroom apartment complex that I told you about, that was a 112 unit complex, and they had about 60 units vacant. The girl was like, yeah, I'll lease it to you. Let's just give it a shot. Like, before I even tried pitching anything. That's when I realized, okay, I got to start going after certain people and start changing the words I say. That was it.
That's
It's
awesome.
just been trial and error forever.
I love it, bro. Aside from the Airbnb, are there any other objections that you get, like, that are like common? And then how would you handle those? Because I think that that's one of your gifts right now. The way that you're explaining things, I think that can be helpful to a lot of viewers out there.
Yeah, man. The first one is, well, you have squatters. How do you deal with squatters? And it's simple. Yeah, we'll never get squatters because we're renting the place short term. They don't get rights to the property. So we just ask them to leave immediately right away. The moment the lease is up, they leave out the door. I think I've only had one time where somebody refused to leave, and that was an Airbnb guest, and Airbnb ended up covering the entire reservation after they left, and they were only there for like 10 days. They were just being punks. The third one is, how are you going to pay for rent? Are you able to pay for rent, and how's my rent going to get paid? Um, and that's a big one because people just need to make sure that you're legit. You'll get and it ties to the fourth one is, they don't want to lease the property to your company because if anything happens to your company, you file bankruptcy and you roll out, and then they're stuck with the empty lease. So they're going to ask you to be a personal guarantor, or they want the lease done in your personal name. I never sign any leases in my personal name for liability issues, but I do come in as a personal guarantor on the leases. So if something were to happen to my company, I'd be liable for the rent. I've done that several times. That's not a big deal. But it doesn't. It's just putting the landlord's mind at ease. Yeah, hey, I'll be the personal guarantor on the lease, no problem at all. That way they know that I'm serious. I'm putting my name behind it. Um, and then they'll ask me, the last one is, how do I handle parties? What if you get a bad guest who's causing parties or disturbing other guests? And I just go into my security systems, and that puts their mind at ease. Simple.
Do they ever ask you like for company proof of funds or anything like that? Like, do
Yeah.
they ever say, hey, like, can you provide a proof of funds? I just want to make sure that if you're going to lease out 8 of my buildings, that you've got enough to cover, like, that you're not just relying on the income that you're making off the Airbnb to cover it.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have the sufficient funds, meaning like it was like your first time, like when you did it with the credit cards, how would you handle that? Would you just
Well, so the very first 2 bedroom apartment, I literally signed it as I was doing my LLC. So everything's under my LLC. And they wanted proof of funds. And before I had the 6 grand, I think I had like 9 grand in the bank. I started spending the money because I needed it. I was using it to survive, and I was just buying random crap. And so, I showed them the bank account that had probably about 2 months history, but I also showed them my personal bank account. And I just showed them that I was making enough to cover the rent. Literally, that's all they wanted to see, was making enough to cover the rent. And it was just a 2 bedroom apartment. It was at like 2 grand, and it was 1 month's deposit. So they just needed to see 2x. I had $4,000 in the bank, so they were good with it. The big ones, when I take over these big apartments, yeah, I had to have some serious money in the account. When I took over the 30 unit complex, I ended up signing 16 leases on that in that 30 unit complex total. They needed to see enough money in the bank to cover it. And so I just showed um, last year's tax history, and then I showed my 2 months bank statements, and I became a personal guarantor on the lease. So that way, in case something happened, they were protected.
have you ever had like one of these properties that you've rented not work out for whatever reason? Meaning like maybe not the right area, maybe something that you didn't factor in. And if so, like what did you learn from something like that?
Yeah, dude, that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked that question. So the answer is yes and no. All my properties minimum make me $800 to $1,500 a month on a 1 bedroom apartment. And so I've had properties that don't perform well, but they still at the end of the year make profit. I've never had a property that's lost me money at the end of the year. Now, this is important for people to know that I mean on average for the year on a 12-month period, right? It could lose money January, February, and then kill it March, April, May, June, July, August, and then just lose money November, October, November, December, right? And so when I take the entire month out and average it at the end of the year, it still made me money. Therefore, it's really technically not a bad investment. But I had to
Mhm.
endure the bad months. So if I'm not able to get past the bad months, like right now, I just had a terrible month, right? January and February are the worst months. And so I'm literally getting wrecked, right? It's either my thing is just break even, um, or lose a couple $100, right? With so many properties, it's hopefully I don't lose anything because it's a lot. But that's the beauty about economies of scale, is that you have so many properties, the good ones will cover the bad ones. You'll always have good ones cover bad ones. But I've never had one property to where it's just wrecking me to the point to where I had to close it down at the end of the year. Not yet, at least.
That's awesome. Congratulations. Now, are there certain like lease terms that you look out for? I know that sometimes like you'll tell owners like, hey, look, let me lease it out for 6 months. If it doesn't work out, like we can split ways. Like, is there like, and I know that's obviously a risk on your end because you have to furnish it, you have to get it ready. There's certain overhead costs. Like best practices, are we typically looking for a minimum of a 1 year lease? Are we looking for like a 3 year window? Um, and also like are there actual certain properties that wouldn't work out for this, or is it just a numbers game basically? Like if I have a property like in a C class area, where maybe like there's certain activity, like is that not going to work out as well too?
Number one, you everything when I start something new. Sorry, I lost track of your first question, so I was trying to remember it. When you
The
start new,
leases, yeah.
yeah, when you start new and you're in a new market, I only do a 1 year lease to try out the market. Obviously, I ran my numbers. I make sure that that market's going to work. On average, I'm going to make my minimum $800 to $1,200, but I do a 1 year lease, and mainly because yes, what you said. I'm going to invest minimum 10 grand into a 1 bedroom apartment to furnish and set up. Therefore, I don't want to lose it in 6 months and lose that money out because you sell the furniture at a discount. You're never going to get that money back at 100%. So a 1 year lease to give it a shot. If it's in a market that I already know is doing really well and it's not saturated, number two, I check for market saturation. That's a real thing. But if it's in a good market where I know I'm already operating and I'm already crushing, I do anywhere from 3 to 5 year leases. My average is 2 years just to keep it safe. Um, but yeah, 1 year to try out, 3 years. C class, it depends. I have properties in some C class locations where the inside is of the number one, the property isn't C class itself. The location is C class, right? The
Yeah.
property's B or better. So the inside is just amazing, but the outside's hood, you know? And so I do get complaints of people who drive by all the time and they're like, oh, we don't like the property. Well, maybe you should walk into the property first to see what you feel inside before you cancel the reservation. And we get cancellations all the time. It's part of the business. I get people who will stay there and they'll be like, "Oh, I heard somebody shooting people outside on the alleyway," and I'm like, "Bro, nobody shot anybody in the alleyway, right?" And they'll try to get a free reservation, and it's like you get these people all the time. But yeah, I mean, if you're new, I would stay away from those because you don't have the fortitude or the experience to deal with those type of problems. I would go to like a B. Actually, you know what? To be honest, C and B, if you're a new beginner, go there. A class, stay away from because you're gonna get all the mom and the grandma and grandpas and the Karens in the neighborhood that are just gonna shut you down right away anyway on A class neighborhoods. D class neighborhoods, it's just unsafe. You don't want to put people at risk.
Yeah. Now you said that you check for market saturation. Like, is that through AirDNA basically, and is that process just basically looking at the comps? Because I think AirDNA tells you like, okay, like what's the nightly rate? It actually tells you what the other units, what their occupancy is at as well too. So if you see really low occupancy, then you can make adjustments there. Is that what you mean by you take a look at the saturation, or is there anything else that like maybe as a new person in this market that they should be looking at?
Yeah, if you're a new person, you're gonna want to pull up Airbnb, and again, 15 days out, 45 days out, and then 2 months out, and check everything in that area. Because if you check 5 to 15 days out, odds are a lot of those are already booked. But if you check 3 months out, odds are a lot of those are still vacant, and you'll be able to see how many actually pop up in that corner. Now you got to do some actual research on it, right? Spend maybe an hour on Airbnb checking, zooming in and zooming out of the map, checking different types of properties, filters, because Airbnb does a really good job at hiding properties. It only shows the ones that he thinks you're going to want to book. So you're not going to get an accurate count. But Airbnb is the first place to actually look if you don't want to pay for AirDNA, and you'll know how many are literally sitting in your corner. You can also call Airbnb and they'll put you in touch with like certain reps that'll give you that information. Unless you're a host, they'll be pretty hesitant to give you info if you're not a host. But if you're a host, they'll want to work with you so that you can continue hosting in that market. But AirDNA is the one that you actually use to get all of the data in your neighborhoods. So like you can pull up a 5 block radius and it's going to tell you how many properties are there of that property type, and you'll be able to get an idea of how much that saturation is really going to affect you. In one of my markets, it's gone down. Booking has gone down 10%. Revenue has gone down 10% year over year, and the demand has gone down 10% year over year. But the number of properties popping up just in the last 90 days went up 56%. So it was like 36 new properties are opening every month here, which is insane. It's only a matter of time before they shut down, or it's just people that don't know what they're doing who are trying to give Airbnb a shot, not knowing that saturation is a real thing. And then it's going to affect your daily rate because everybody's competing with each other and they're trying to drop the rate to as low as possible. And if you're arbitrage at a certain rate, you're not going to survive. It's going to hurt you really bad.
No, I think the cool thing is, and this is kind of one of the things that my friend said, a lot of people think that like in order to rent out a property, it's only Airbnb. But like you said, that's just one of the marketing platforms that you use. What are some of the other ones like that people can use? And is there a platform that you use to manage all the different bookings so that they all sync within the same calendar?
Yeah. I mean, Airbnb is the easiest one. It's the one that people use because it does all the work for you. But you can get on VRBO, Booking.com, Expedia. I mean, I don't know, there's a bunch. Those are the main ones are Booking.com, VRBO, and Airbnb. They're the main ones. They're the ones that everybody uses. But a big part of it is doing direct bookings, right? Marketing your own place to the right companies, doing that groundwork. When you do midterm rentals, that's what you have to do. You're gonna want to market for you're gonna want to do the groundwork for those agencies, because there's no one booking platform for travel agencies or booking agencies or insurance companies. To answer your question, there is channel managers and property management softwares. There's hundreds of them out there that you can use to manage your calendar, your pricing, your messaging, all of that in one central location. The one I've been using is Hospitable. I'm going to slowly switch away from them now because I've gone too large, and they're really good starting off. But there's hundreds of them. You're going to want to use pricing tools, right? Price Labs. You can use Wheelhouse. There's a bunch of pricing tools out there also. So
By pricing tools, you mean somebody that tells you what like a system that tells you what to price it at, and also adjust for seasonality and different types of things as well too.
yeah, they give you a base rate on what you can use to start pricing your property. So like they'll tell you like, hey, in this area, we think based on the data around it that you should be pricing this at $100 a night. Like that's what AirDNA does for you. It basically pulls all the data in that market around you and it tells you what you think it's going to make. You can get a better product, depending on if you provide a better product, depending on where you're at, you can do significantly higher than what those pricing platforms give you. You just got to know what market you're in and the rates that they're going in.
How often are you guys switching the price up whenever you're marketing properties? Is this something like the price, something that's being monitored on a daily basis? Is this something that should be monitored like once a month,
Yeah,
once a quarter,
no,
once a
weekly.
year?
I do mine weekly. You got to monitor everything weekly because 1 week can set you back 2-3 weeks worth of pricing. So I check 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out. I do it every single week.
So
So
every single week you're basically doing homework on like, hey, look, has like, for example, like you knew that there was 36 new properties in the last since this year. So that obviously increases the market saturation, which decreases the amount of potential bookings that you have, which means you may have to be more competitive in terms of the pricing, which could affect obviously the 75 to 80 or 75% occupancy. Now, you said something really important, and I didn't really think about this. So we have Airbnbs, and then we recently started doing the VRBOs. We started doing on bookings.com and some of the other ones. But one thing that I've been learning recently on, and maybe you can touch on it, is about direct bookings and also like corporate, like actual corporate leases. I know that a lot of rental arbitrage people say, oh, we have corporate leases, but in reality, they're just using Airbnb to book in some cases. How would you build relationships with some of these like companies, and where would you go? I know that you said that there's not like a central hub. Like who are the people that we should be reaching out to, like titles for certain companies, or like for insurance? Is it like an adjuster? Like what do we how do
yeah.
we do that part?
So the first thing I want to touch on is you guys got to be very careful when you guys go to if you're going to arbitrage and say you're doing corporate leases, because the property manager or the owner that you're talking to, everybody has a very different definition of what a corporate lease means. And a corporate lease, literally all it means is that it's your company signing the lease. That's all it is, right? So my company signs the lease. That's a corporate lease. It doesn't mean that I'm leasing it out to corporations, right?
I didn't know that.
Um, yeah,
That's what
and
I assumed.
a lot of these property management companies, they'll think that if you say, hey, I want to do a corporate lease, they think it's your company who's signing the lease and you're housing your employees only, nobody else. So when they start seeing that you're doing Airbnb or bringing other people in, it's going to be like you get the boot out the door right away. That's what I'm talking about, like with these giant apartment complexes. So you guys got to be very careful with that, number one. But going to the actual corporate housing of things, when you're going after a corporation so that you can provide the housing for them, like you're doing an actual corporate lease with them, um, you can go to it. So it really depends, honestly. Number one, it's always data mining and scrubbing data, right? When I get people book with me more than 2 weeks on Airbnb, I ask them why they're here. Why are you here for 2 weeks? And the odds are they're there for a work assignment. Oh, who do you work with? Okay, can I get their info so that we can start providing better deals for you guys? That way you guys can save on the service fees. People are happy to save the hundreds of dollars on the service fees. So you start building your database that way from day number one. Number two, if you want to go after the actual companies, you're going to go after actual insurance placement companies. Those are my biggest ones. I don't talk about them often because I don't know. People just like me talking about short-term rentals the most, but short-term, when you do insurance agencies, when you go after the displacement companies, they're going to act. So the way it works is the placement agency is going to book your place. They pay you for the place, but the one that's on the lease or the short-term lease or that mid-term lease is the guest or the tenant who they're providing the house for. So for example, if I'm providing the house, and Jose, you're the travel agency who's trying to provide a house for, I don't know, Mario, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you go, hey Rafa, I need a 3-bed 2-bath. Mario and his family need a place to stay. I say, yeah, I got it. I give you a 3-bed 2-bath. Mario is the one who's going to sign my lease. They're the ones that are going to be in the documents, but the check is coming directly from you, the insurance booking agency or the displacement agency, and you pay me a check every single month. Some of them will pay you everything up front. Some will pay you every 30 days. Some will just do wire transfer. It just depends. They're all different. But that's the way it works with those guys. But I built a relationship with you, and your job as a placement agency is you're finding homes for these guys, and you just happen to work with me. Therefore, I provide the home for you. You put the family in. Does that make sense?
I might have missed this, but how do I find placement companies?
Everywhere, dude. A biggest one out there is ALE Solutions. Literally ALE Solutions. It's one of the most popular ones now, but you can call actual insurance agencies and talk to the displacement brokers or the people who are in charge of finding homes for people when their house is flooded, on fire, being rehabbed, all that stuff. Those are the easiest ways to do it. Now, there's a certain way to talk to these guys. When you call and you message these guys, you need to have the property available and all the details available for them, because they're not going to waste their time with you. Number one, you got to be a legitimate corporate housing company. You're going to have multiple properties, not just one. They won't talk to you if you have one in the area. They don't care because they have a lot of connections. Number two, you got to provide a really good service. So you got to let them know if you're providing the house empty with or without furniture, how many people are sleeping. They'll give you a big questionnaire, but in order to be successful, you want to have all that info up front, right? Do you allow pets? How much is your pet fee? Do you have a deposit? How much is your deposit? Do you allow us to extend even after our first 2-month term or 3-month term? What if you have another booking? Will you cancel that booking for us? Like things like that, right? And that's through mainly the insurance displacement agencies. And it's simple as calling them. You just got to start building the relationships with them.
What are the different systems that it takes to like run an Airbnb? Like meaning like cleaning people, handyman, noise detectors.
Yeah. Number one, you're going to need a keypad door lock for sure, right? That's how people are going to check in, so you don't have to give keys out. Number two, you're going to need a reliable cleaning team, so a good cleaner, who also does linens for you. But if you have scale, you're going to want a linen company. Number four, you're going to need a boots on the ground, so someone that's doing all your runs for you. Like if toaster broke, someone has to deliver it. Batteries died, someone has to go change them. That will also be your maintenance person. So your boots on the ground can be your maintenance person who handles all of the little tasks that need to get repaired when issues happen. That's your actual personnel. As far as your tech stack, you need the noise monitoring systems. I use Minut, MINUT. If you want to put a security system, you can go ahead and do security systems. There's all kinds out there. I use the Ring doorbell cameras. They're just the most reliable and they work good. You can use, there's actually smoke detector and CO2 detectors that you can connect to Wi-Fi. Those are the ones you're going to want to use. The Nest thermostat, so you can save on electricity. You can use those as well. Those are the biggest ones off the top of my head. Nothing too complicated. Just got to know how to use them in sync with your process.
What about like, is there special insurance required for arbitrage?
Yeah, it's a really good question. That just depends on whoever you're leasing from. Everybody's going to want renter's insurance to put their mind at ease, but renter's insurance will never cover you if you're using it as a short-term rental or a mid-term rental. Mm-hmm. So you're going to want to get a short-term rental insurance. They're super expensive. The biggest one's proper insurance. They're extremely pricey, but they provide a really good service for you in case something ever happens. They do things like bed bugs insurance. They do squatters insurance. They do entire building insurance. I mean, they're just really expensive. Some of my 1-bedrooms are like $150 a month, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. Then you can do Airbnb provides their own like host cover insurance. I wouldn't use that as insurance, but it does help you to protect some of your items in the apartment or home itself. I just wouldn't rely on it. There's a lot out there, dude. I don't know them off the top of my head, to be honest. There's a couple out there that only provide certain, you pay like, I think you pay 50, gosh darn it, I wish I remember the name of this one. Pay $50 a reservation, and they will actually cover up to like I think $3,000 worth of damages if anything ever happens.
Hmm.
So you're just paying per reservation, which will get expensive. But if something does happen in that reservation, they cover for you, no questions asked. So if a lamp breaks, they replace the lamp. If a couch broke, they replace the couch. Things like that.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this: how do you deal with problems like if guests like if something breaks in the middle of the night? Like, how is that handled in a situation like that? Like wherever, like
I mean, hey, we'll deal with it in the morning. We don't. It's dude. I mean, look, if it's something major, where like a water leak, you have to deal with it on the spot. But I get people who will call me all the time and they go, "Hey, the smoke detector battery just died and it's beeping every 10 minutes and it's like 1 in the morning." And I'm like, dude, pull it off, take it off, and we'll deal with it in the morning. Otherwise, I don't have somebody to send you at 2 in the morning. And that's a simple, gentle reminder. Remember, you're staying in my home. It's not a hotel, right? People feel really entitled to have to get responded to or answered on the spot. And it's like, bro, you're staying in somebody's home. You're not staying in a hotel or some where they have 24-hour staff. But you got to let people know ahead of time that there's nobody on site, and that when an issue arises, we'll deal with it as soon as we possibly can. But there's nobody on site to deal with it on the spot. Now, if it's a major issue where like a water pipe leak, you have to deal with it, right? You have
you
to
have
get
to
up out
deal
of
with it
bed and
on the
go
spot?
handle with it. Yes.
Yeah. What about would you say that the arbitrage business is a scalable model, or what are some of the challenges that you see with the arbitrage business? And do you like arbitrage better, or do you like owning the property better, or is there no preference in that aspect?
No, it's very scalable. I mean, like you see me, right? I have 71 properties now. 53 of them are arbitrage, right? So it's very, very scalable. You just got to build the systems like everything else. It's actually more scalable than if you were owning property, because you can build so many arbitrage units faster than if you can buy. I can't buy 53 properties as fast as I arbitrage these
Can
53 properties, right? I can take over a 30 unit complex in one shot, have it ready in 30 days, as opposed to buying 30 properties and have them ready in 30 days. It's just not going to happen. So it's very scalable. The thing is that it's not sustainable long term. Number one, you don't own the property. At some point, that owner might get tired of you, or at some point, the owner might sell the building. I've lost almost 30 units at one point because the owner sold the property, and I had to shut down and move them. Right, the new owner didn't want anything to do with us. So that's a big issue. People got to use it as it is a cash flow model in the short term. Take your profits and put them into actual ownership of properties. I like ownership 100 times better, because that was the goal from number one, is to own property. I know that if I own the property, no one's going to bother me when it's 30 years down the line. If I'm renting this property, who knows what's going to happen 30 years down the line? He might have handed that property down to the nephew, the cousin, the uncle. He might have sold it. The city might have already told them that they can't do that anymore in that location, right? So they had to convert to long-term tenants. If it's my property, I can always pivot to any type of situation that's a city ordinance, that's whatever it
Yes.
is the case may be. Not to mention, when you get the depreciation, right? You get the appreciation. I mean, it's long-term wealth. One house can be your retirement plan, right? Everybody's talking about their 401k, how when they retire they're gonna have 300 grand sitting there. Buy one house right now, pay it off in 30 years, and you're gonna have $500,000 sitting there. You sell the house and there's your retirement plan. You know what I mean? And so it's like, when you use the money right from arbitrage and you start building it and putting it to actual properties that you're going to own and to build wealth with, that's what you need to focus on. I love arbitrage. Don't get me wrong. I just signed 3 new leases yesterday. I keep saying I'm not going to do it, but I have such good relationships with people, and I know the money that it generates, that I'm like, it'd be dumb for me to pass it up to someone who doesn't know what they're doing, who's going to cause problems for me in the neighborhood, as opposed to me taking it over, right? But at the same time, I know that I need to take that money and invest it into some actual wealth generating properties that I actually own, for a sustainable long-term business. I don't want to stress in 10 years that my arbitrage business went down and I have no money coming in from anywhere else. I want to have it in 10 years where I have 50 ownership, 50 arbitrage, my 50 shut down. I still have 50 generating cash flow every month.
What I was going to ask you is what is the benefit to the owner of working with you, like on a rental arbitrage? Like, meaning, like, do you have to pay more than what market rent is a lot of the times, or like what's the benefit to them? Meaning, as opposed to just renting it long term, if it's
Yeah,
not
it's a really good
financial,
question.
and in some cases it
Um,
may be financial.
yeah, no, to be honest, that question really varies per person. It's funny. Everybody thinks it's always money it's always financial, and it's not 100%. I don't think I've had anybody work with me because it's a financial aspect to the benefit. Um, Real estate investors are in business for one thing, to invest in real estate, right? That's it. And therefore, when they get a property, all they need to do is put a tenant in it. They don't want to deal with anything else. They want their tenant to live in their property. They want their property to get paid off over time, right? They want to build that appreciation. Maybe they'll sell it in a couple of years. They might hold it on. That's what real estate investors are doing. They're not in it to build a hospitality brand. They're not in it to build a property management company, right? Odds are an owner will just pawn it off to a property management company anyway, right? So the first benefit is if you find someone like that, you're going to save them the 10 to 15% property management because they don't need to hire property management. They're working with you directly. They get to keep their full rent. So if they're charging me $3,000, they get to keep the entire $3,000 every month instead of having to give it to a property management. The property management pockets 10, 15%, then they get the remaining balance. For what? So that I can be the tenant anyway? You get what I'm saying? When I'm the one that's going to deal with all the issues that a property management company is going to deal with anyway, I'm going to be the one paying for all the small maintenance issues. So that's one of the first benefits. The second benefit is the maintenance upkeep. We upkeep the property so good. I have some properties, dude, that I've had for 5.5 years. You walk into them right now and they actually look better than when I first got them because we've updated molding, we've touched up paint, we've fixed, toilet paper racks, towel racks that have broken. We've fixed holes. Like the property just has to look perfect every single time, right? We've redone the floors, we've re-waxed the floors, things like that, not redone the floors. We've re-washed carpets, things like that. Like it just always looks good, as opposed to someone who gives it back to you in a year and the place is just wrecked and destroyed. And now you have to go in and get a maintenance person and spend, I don't know, $3-4 grand to bring the place up to par again, to get it furnished. Rented again. With us, when you get it back, it looks the same. You might have to patch a couple holes here and there, but it looks exactly the same. Now you got it back. That's the deal. Hey, if you kick me out in 3 years, I'll make sure that I take care of everything so that you get your house ready to rent on the spot. Matter of fact, even a better benefit is I'll rent it out for you. I'll find you the tenant so that when I leave, there's no vacancy and you already have a tenant in there for as long as you want to have them, with your approval, of course, right? That's another benefit. Another benefit, it's funny, this one was weird. The guy only wanted to make sure that I wouldn't have squatters. That was his biggest concern. He didn't care about anything else. He's like, hey, look, I'll give you, this is the rent. This is the market rent. I don't care about anything else. Just make sure you don't have squatters on my property. It's because he's dealt with squatters and it was a nightmare for him. And that was it. And once I told him,
how did you handle that?
I just told him there'll never be a squatter because if anybody squats, it's me, the guy who's signing the lease. And I'm not going to squat on your property because look at my track record. I have all these other properties. So when you work with me, you're dealing with me. If there is a squatter and somebody does stay in the property, that's my problem, not your problem. And I have to deal with them because I'm the one on the lease with you. So if guest B says, hey, I'm not leaving for 5 days, I have to figure out how to kick them out, which I can actually kick them out because there's no actual rights to the property.
You're basically providing massive convenience for them and
100%.
Basically making it easier for them than they would basically on their own.
And the final benefit, aside from it's a major convenience factor, 100%. And the final one is monetary, right? Some of them will tell you, hey, I want you to give me higher rent if you're going to do this. I always say no, or I do it in two ways. I have overpaid rent on a couple locations, but I've taken 2 months upfront free. So if I average it out over the course of the next 2 years, my rent's the same. I just made the money upfront as opposed to saving it every single month. They're happy. They've already accounted for their 2 months of vacancy anyway when they bought the property, so they don't care. And then they get their high rent over the course of the next two years. But I made all that money on the rent difference on the first 2 months because I got to furnish the place and rent it out for 2 months to generate a couple $1,000s rent free. And then I can apply that to my rent for the next 2 years if I really wanted to. So it's kind of like,
how do you pitch the 2 months free? Like, is that like, hey, look, it's going to take me some time to get the property ready to basically lease it, or how do you pitch that one?
I simply ask, hey, is there room for the first free month on this if I sign a lease right now? And I say that because, how do I say this for a new person starting in this? When you're new, your negotiation leverage is that you can take multiple units at a time when you're already established. When you're new, you can't take multiple units at a time because, well, you don't have the funds, you don't know what you're doing, you don't have the team built out. So it's a simple question. Hey, is there room for first month's free if I sign a lease right now for the next, I don't know, if I do an extended lease for 18 months or something like that? Just a simple question. What are the odds that you'd give me the first month's free if I sign longer than a 1-year lease? That simple. When you ask what are the odds, people are like, well, the odds are If you give me an 18-month lease, sure. But if you go, hey, can I get a free month rent? They're like, no. You know what I'm saying? The way you ask it is literally the world of difference. And so, but when you're established, dude, I've made $40,000 up front one time on 2 months rent on 8 units. It was nuts. And I got 2 free months, 8 units across the board. I set them, dude. I had them all up and running in 7 days, literally. And so 2 months of revenue on 8 units was $40,000 free in my pocket because I had no expenses. Of course, other than that $400-500 expense that we talked about, the operational expense. Yeah. That's insane, right? And it was like, hey, it was a vacancy issue. It was a 24-unit building. I didn't know how I was going to do in that building, so I only took one. And I wasn't going to take any more because it was just really expensive. It was a loft. I'm paying like $3,100 in it. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make money in this. Even now I'm hurting from them, hurting to the point where not making the amount of money I want to make. Right. But not where it's like negative, how we talked about earlier. But anyway, so this guy goes, hey, I have this one apartment. You want multiple? And I already have a relationship with them in another building. And I was like, dude, I don't know how these are going to do. It's really expensive. I'll take one. I'll try it out. It'll be my tester, kind of proof of concept here. And a few weeks later, he's like, hey, dude, I'm having a hard time. Do you want to take some more? I'll give you a sweet deal. If you take this one, I'll give you 2 months. 2 weeks free, and I'll give you a lower rate. And I'm like, all right, give me a free month. I'll take one more. And so we did. I signed the lease. And then literally like a week later, he's like, hey, bro, I still have like 6 left. We're not getting hits. And I was like, dude, it's because your rent's too high. And he's like, it's just, they're really sweet. It's like a back and forth. They're really sweet, but they're not. They're kind of hard to get, et cetera, et cetera. And so I ended up negotiating, to make the story short. I was like, look, I'll take all 8. You're going to give me 2 free months, but I want you to give me 2 free months on the other 2 that I signed already also. And he was like, well, I was like, that's the only way I'll do it, because then it'll give me the proof of concept. I'll make my money up front, and I'll just pay you your market rent that you wanted at $3,000. And he was like, all right, sweet, let's do it. And he did. And I ended up signing a 2-year lease on those. And literally, dude, I was like, all right, it's go time. And we got them set up right away. And it was crazy. I ended up doing $40,000 in revenue in the first 2 months, and I got to pocket it all up front.
That's awesome. Is that a lease that you potentially see yourself renewing after the 2-year mark, or probably renegotiating, I would imagine, at that point?
Yeah, it's going to be, this is with the type of lease that's going to be a renegotiation. They're already talking about doing a rent increase. I'm already talking about leaving. So if when we get to that point, and it's coming up, I think in like 6 months or something, when we get to that point, it's going to be like, hey, I'm going to show proof. Here's how slow it's gotten. If you guys want, you guys can have your units back and market them at whatever rent you guys want now, or let's negotiate. I'll do another 2-year lease, but you got to drop the rent a couple $100 each month so that I can continue operating here. I don't want to leave because it's going to cost me money to leave, but if I need to, by all means, or I'll do something where another negotiation where I can do is like, hey, I'll rent it out for you as a furnished rental for you guys. And then I pocket the difference, so to speak, right? Furnished rental just makes a couple $100 on top, and they're cool with that most of the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So there's multiple ways to kind of skin it. Here's the last question that I had for you. Like, are there any like mistakes that you see frequently with like people that are starting off with rental arbitrage? And what are those, and what could people do to kind of prevent that?
Bro, there's so many. It's why I started teaching this stuff. I never wanted to teach it. I get people all the time asking me. I was like, you know what? Now I have a course and everything going, because there's so many people out there teaching arbitrage when they've only opened like 1 or 2 units, because it's like the hot new thing. Everybody wants to learn it. The biggest mistake is listening to the wrong influencer who's going to teach you the wrong thing to say or where to go. I don't know how many times people call me and ask me, hey, I've sent out 1,000 emails last week pitching. And I'm like, why would you do that? He's like, because the more I send out, the more yeses I'll get. It's like, no, dude, you're just burning leads. All you're doing is burning leads. Nobody, if you get somebody that reads it, they're going to go, this is a joke. Nobody's going to want to work with you on a 5-paragraph pitch on an email. That's the first mistake. The second biggest mistake that I see people making is they overpay rent. So important. Remember I told you, I don't know how I can stress that so much in the beginning of this conversation. People are overpaying for rent just to get their foot in the door because they get that first yes. You get that first yes, and they're charging you an extra $500 in rent. How is that a win? You're better off not taking it, because you're not going to make any money over the course of that year lease that you signed. And you, not to mention, you're going to invest all that money. You got to get in at the right rate in order to make this a profitable, sustainable business. And that's the biggest mistake people make. They get excited that they got a yes, but they got a yes with an extra $600 of rent added on top, and they didn't even bother to check or do their homework. They're just excited they got the yes, they set up, and then a month later, they're really struggling to make ends meet because they're not making any money, right? Here's 2 of the biggest more mistakes on top of it. The one after that is not saving any money from your profits. Anytime somebody new gets excited, they'll make $1,000, $2,000 on a really good month. Let's say you start off in summer and you make $2,000 in profit, and you pocket that money and you go and have a great summer. And then the winter hits and you're breaking even or losing money and you have no money in the bank to cover those costs. That's it. You're done, right? Not saving at least 3 months worth of income from that unit or those apartments that you opened up to cover the bad months is one of the biggest mistakes. People end up closing shop because they can't afford to pay rent because they have no money sitting there, right? And then the final mistake is the amount of money you invested into furnishing. Anybody will tell you out there that you can start with $4,000, right? You can't anymore. A 1-bedroom apartment, you can't just put in a bed and a wall and a picture you found on Craigslist or at a garage sale. You need to professionally design these places now to really stand out. The market's so difficult now. Unless you're like 5 minutes from Disneyland and you own the place, it's going to be very difficult to get this place set up and make it profitable. You have to stand out. And by standing out, it means you have to get a designer. Don't think that you can design yourself or watch a couple Pinterest posts and go out and do it yourself. You have to hire a designer unless you're really good at designing and investing the money to make this place really stand out and provide the amenities that a traveler is really going to need, right? Not just a couch and a bed, but a couch with the work desk, a standing desk, maybe a monitor, a nice accent wall, I don't know, whatever, heated blanket, whatever the heck you want to provide in there, right? Blackout curtains, all that fun stuff. You really got to invest some money into it to stand out. Otherwise, doesn't matter how good you are, you're setting yourself up for failure. So hopefully those help.
I love it, brother. Now, if people wanted to get, like, let's say somebody sees this and they're like, man, this guy really knows what he's talking about, I want to get in contact with him. How would people get in contact with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, so I have a couple things. The best and fastest way is to find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is it's Rafa Loza, ITS Rafa Loza, Loza. The second way, if you guys just want to get free info and you guys want to learn, I talk about this on my podcast. I have my own podcast. It's called The Big Break Show. We're about, 60 episodes in, and we bring different speakers, but I talk a lot about short-term rentals with my associate, my co-host. He talks a lot about mid-term rentals. And then I have a Facebook group called Airbnb The Big Break, where we just give out free knowledge and people go in there and share their information with each other. But the best one, Instagram, just reach out. And just have a bunch of resources for you guys there as well.
I love it. Cool, man. Well, I want to say thank you for taking the time to be on the show. For all of our viewers out there, we had Rafa Loza. He is a midterm, short-term investor, does Airbnb, rental arbitrage, all that. If you're interested, I would reach out to him. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you feel that this episode will be helpful to a friend, make sure to hit that share button. Once again, my name is Jose Luis Morales. I am the host of the Morales Group Show, and thank you guys for being on. And once again, Rafa, thank you for being on the podcast as well, too.
It was my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.